Let's talk food and wine in Tonia's kitchen. Have a seat at the table. Here is Tonia King.
Joining me today is Katherine Anderson, florist and restaurant owner. We're talking about the brand new book, The London Plain, Flower and Cookbook. Thanks for joining me, Katherine.
Thank you so much for having me, Tonia.
What a masterpiece of a book. My goodness, this book you can't put down once you pick up.
Thank you so much. It's a little bit of an unusual book because I wrote it after I closed the restaurant and flower shop. So it's kind of in memory of a restaurant and shop.
There are many of us that don't come from Seattle or know the history of Seattle, and many of us don't even know what the London Plain is. So why don't you start with a little bit of a history?
Sure. So I originally started with a flower farm about 40 minutes east of Seattle. And then I opened a small flower shop. And within a couple of years, decided to partner with a chef who had a very same shared vision of how to approach locally grown food and flowers to open the London Plain. So the London Plain for 10 years was under one roof, an all-day cafe, restaurant, a bakery, and a flower shop in the neighborhood of Pioneer Square, which is sort of the historic heart of Seattle. My partner, Matt, and I, my business partner, really had this vision of creating a third place in the way that people talk about coffee shops and bookstores as third places where you could come in and just take a deep breath and feel a little bit better about your day because it was so much nourishment on offer, from the table full of flowers that you would see when you walk in the door that were part of the floral shop program, to seeing the chefs in the kitchen, in the open kitchen across the span of the restaurant, to the bread baker back in the corner and the pastry people behind that person. It was just meant to be a place to sort of, in Seattle, come in out of the rain, either, by yourself or with your parents or your, girlfriends, or, just that you were always welcome. And it wasn't just about coming in to sit down and eat and get you out the door.
It sounds like a lovely place to frequent for sure. My goodness, who wouldn't want to enjoy a cup of tea or coffee and a scone or something in an environment like that? So you guys developed this and it was going strong for like 10 years, you said?
Yeah. And it was when we started in 2012, there were no models of a restaurant and flower shop sort of together in one space that we could find. So, I mean, one in Florence, Italy that we came across. And so it was hard to raise money to explain to people what it was we were doing. But once it got underway, it was like quite obvious to everyone who came in why it made sense, why locally grown food and flowers are all on a spectrum of, things that are grown and can serve you in different ways. And what part of what was so beautiful was the way in which what was food and what was flowers sort of wove together. So we would use a lot of herbs that I grew on my farm in flower arrangements, but we'd also use those herbs in the kitchen. There were things like cherry blossoms that would come in on branches that we would use in the flower shop, that then the chefs would say, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's something I could do with those. And they would, experiment and make a dish that would end up on the menu. So it had a sort of creative electricity about it that was really rewarding.
Gosh, it sounds like a great place. Sounds like it's a legend. It sounds like it was really a destination place.
It was really beloved by the community, and also people would bring, when someone would come to town, this is where they'd bring them. And it was very bittersweet when it was time to close. I kept sort of using it as my mantra, nothing lasts forever, because I felt, it was a hard decision, but the lease was up. And as I'm sure you know, it's really hard to make the numbers work in the restaurant world.
Right.
But one thing about the book is it ended up being sort of three different things. It's organized around the months, January to December.
I noticed that. Yeah.
Yep. which a lot of food books are seasonally organized. But I think what's kind of special about this one is that with every chapter, not only do you have 5 recipes that were recipes that we like to cook in the kitchen and serve to our guests, but there's also, I wrote 2 essays in every chapter. One of them is about what flowers I like to grow on the farm and or use in the flower shop during that month. And then there was also in every chapter an essay about sort of life behind the scenes in the restaurant and what was going on. And so it became much more of a memoir about the community of sort of young creative people who worked there and how we traveled through COVID together. And so it was sort of more emotional than I anticipated it to be.
Absolutely.
And then of course there are, yeah, like beautiful pictures of flowers and food. So who doesn't like that?
It's great because the recipes are so seasonal for every month and every season, and especially whatever is growing in the Seattle area at that time.
Exactly. So like right now, our kitchen would be getting excited about nettles.
I noticed you have a recipe for nettle pesto.
Yes. And to be clear, so my background isn't in cooking. I was the florist and, sort of creative design vision behind the business. I had a chef partner, and then we had amazing, especially younger chefs working in the restaurant once we got the menu established. And so with the book, I invited 5 of the chefs who'd been with us to contribute some of their favorite recipes from when they worked there. And so that there are all these different voices in the book from those different chefs. And the nettle is just such a classic thing you see on menus come March in Seattle. That sort of astringent and bright green, and everyone thinks it's nourishing and doing something really good for their body at this time of year. So
Yeah,
you see that.
it's interesting because the book is like the restaurant coming alive again.
When we closed the restaurant, I knew there was sort of more to be done, and there may be more still, but I knew there was a book in there somewhere. I just wasn't quite sure what form it would take. So that had to sort of settle for a couple months, and it became clear that one thing I wanted to do was to create an object that felt like a piece of the London plane for everyone who had loved it. Partnered with a publisher a press that does a lot of art books, like books for museums and surveys of an artist's career, because I wanted it to be that beautiful in terms of the production. So I feel like it's a real gift to the people who supported us, but it does have appeal beyond just, those who knew and loved the London plane. It's a beautiful story of a restaurant's life and also what it's like to really dig in seasonally in the Pacific Northwest and what that felt like.
I know you said you were the florist and not the cook, but are you able to share maybe one of the most popular recipes
Oh,
from the London
absolutely.
plane?
And part of what's beautiful about the book is I'm not a professional chef, but I can make any of the recipes in this book. And so I was a good tester for all of these. And one of the things we were really famous for was our sourdough bread. And so in the beginning of the book, and this was, before COVID started and the sourdough bread craze, but that is perhaps the one essay that I would say is too hard for me. But it's a beautiful essay in the form of a recipe by the man who made all our sourdough bread. So that's something to actually sit down and read that with a cup of tea and really enjoy sort of Michael's love letter to making sourdough bread. But if you want to make something, our chicken pot pie was actually incredibly popular, and that's later on in the book. I think we have it as more of a fall recipe, but that is incredibly delicious.
Who was the chef that created that recipe?
So that one was Danny. It's funny because Danny Conklin had worked for Danielle in New York, and he had really strong French training. And so he brought that sort of refinement to the work that he did in the kitchen.
We are coming into spring and Sure. Easter's coming up. Can you suggest any recipes from the book that might work for spring dining?
Yes, absolutely. Asparagus is showing up. One thing we have in the book is an asparagus tartine. For people who don't know, a tartine is really just an open-faced sandwich. So we would start with the sourdough bread that we were making in the bakery, and get asparagus delivered from a local farm or get it from your, organic grocery store. And this is a recipe by Zach, and it's really thick sliced sourdough toast topped with seared asparagus and sort of a mustardy cheese sauce, a fried egg, and then truly a blizzard of herbs. I'd say one thing that our restaurant, all of our chefs really embraced was the more herbs, the better. So, that could be parsley and dill and chervil and chives and thyme. And part of what was, the recipes in the book are really relatively straightforward, but full of flavor, I would say.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So you feel the taste of the things coming out of the ground. And we used plenty of meat and eggs, but it really was, everything sort of began with the vegetable.
I'm really enjoying the beautiful pictures. Peonies, this is just unreal. Let's talk about another spring dish.
It's hard to resist this time of year is the rhubarb galette.
Oh.
And that, again, rhubarb is an early spring vegetable in the Northwest. And we actually had a sort of a variety of rhubarb that's green. But the galette is, just sort of a less formal tart. You roll out the dough, and for this galette, we made a frangipane sort of paste, spread on the dough. And then on top of that, you would put the mix of rhubarb and orange zest and sugar. And then you just fold up the edges of the galette. So it's a more rustic style.
I was just going to say that, very rustic galettes.
Yeah. I mean, we always had some kind of galette on the menu. So in the spring, it was rhubarb, and then we would have peach or apricot in the summer and apple in the fall. And they just, we couldn't keep them in stock. We would serve them as on the plate, but we also had them in our freezer, so you could take them home, so to speak. So that worked really well.
How many years has it been since the restaurant has closed?
So I can't believe it, but it's now been 3 years. So I had a chef partner, Matt, who then moved on to other things. And then our general manager, Yasuaki, became my primary partner. And he has gone on to open 3 more restaurants in the Seattle area, sort of like the spirit of the London Plain. He really embodies hospitality like no one I know, lives on through his places. So that is a comfort to me when people say, when are you going to open another London Plain? For now, we have Yasu, and I'm still farming. And so I, harvest those flowers and sell them to florists and do special events with I especially grow peonies now. So my peony season is just, the peonies are like 3 inches out of the plants, 3 inches out of the ground. So
you must be excited.
Yeah, it's so exciting. It's so exciting.
It sounds like it was a great place to combine creativity, the love of food and flowers, and just a great place to hang out.
You were greeted by everything that we were working with in the flower shop right away. And you could either just stand and stare, or you could, or smell the flowers while you're waiting for your table, or you could help yourself to flowers and put together your own bouquet, or you could talk to one of the florists and have them put something together for you. So yeah, that it just, has a powerful effect on mood.
Oh, God, yeah. We're talking with Katherine Anderson, florist and restaurant owner of the beloved Seattle gathering place called the London Plain. Brand new book out, The London Plain Flower and Cookbook. How do we find you on social media or find the book?
Thanks for asking, Tonya. So the book can be bought at thelondonplainbook.com, but it's also available at independent bookstores in the Seattle area. In particular, I don't know if you've ever heard of the bookstore Book Larder. It's an incredible cookbook shop in Seattle that's ships books all over the country. I would recommend going to the londonplainbook.com or look up Book Larder, and everyone should get to know Book Larder anyway. And they have an amazing programming with cookbook authors. I also have an Instagram that is at the London Plain Seattle.
It's really been a pleasure chatting with you, Katherine. I'm excited to dig deeper into this book, and I wish you lots of luck. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you'll subscribe to this podcast as we continue to take you around the world of food and wine on Tonia's Kitchen.